the whole thing is sort of set up. They have to have Prince Harry coming in because he's her ticket. We wouldn't talk about Meghan Markle.
The discovery landed without any warning at all. Palace investigators uncovered a bank account linked to Meghan Markle that had stayed out of sight for years, and once the transactions were reviewed, immediate red flags started flashing everywhere. King Charles and Prince William quickly understood they could no longer shield her from scrutiny. What the account revealed went far beyond simple accounting errors or innocent oversights, and as more details surfaced, they faced a choice that would stun observers worldwide, all sparked by what should have been a routine audit that changed everything. The finance office inside Buckingham Palace runs on centuries of discipline and control. Every pound spent by the royal household is logged, tracked, reviewed, and questioned year after year. The annual audit is normally dull and predictable, nothing more than paperwork, until early December 2025, when something didn't add up. Margaret Hartley, a senior accountant with nearly 20 years inside the Royal Finance Office, spotted the issue. She knew the patterns, the flow, and the quiet logic behind how royal money moved. When she reviewed Sussex household accounts from before Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, something stood out sharply. There were small discrepancies, payments just slightly off, expenses that didn't align with official engagement records. Another accountant might have brushed it aside, but Margaret knew better. She'd learned over the years that tiny inconsistencies can signal much bigger trouble. She spent 3 intense days combing through the records. Payment dates were cross-checked against public schedules. Invoices were matched with actual events. The more she reviewed, the more uneasy she became. The discrepancies weren't random at all. They followed a clear pattern. Money was moving in ways that didn't match standard palace operations. Margaret took her findings straight to Thomas Blackwell, a financial veteran who had served through 3 reigns. The moment he saw the numbers, his expression hardened. This couldn't stay quiet at their level. Immediate escalation was unavoidable. Within hours, the issue reached Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary. He knew financial irregularities, even unproven ones, could spiral into disaster if mishandled. Any hint of improper use would ignite a media storm and attract parliamentary attention. Sir Clive ordered a full investigation, but one conducted quietly, tightly controlled, and completely sealed. A small team was assembled. Margaret and Thomas from finance, 2 senior legal advisors, and a discreet investigator experienced in financial forensics. The instructions were strict. No leaks, no outside discussions, no mistakes. This matter stayed locked down. They worked through December, even as the holidays passed, analysing bank statements, wire transfers, vendor contracts, and expense reports. Buried deep in the paperwork was something that should never have been there. Payments were flowing to a consulting firm no one recognised. The fees appeared excessive for standard public relations work. Sarah Chen, the lead investigator, dug deeper into the firm's background. Corporate records showed it was registered in Delaware, a state known for privacy-friendly business laws. The company had almost no online footprint, no website, no visible social presence, red flags everywhere. When the firm's banking records finally arrived, the situation escalated fast. The money didn't remain with the firm. It was immediately transferred to an offshore account in the Channel Islands. The investigation team spent Christmas working in complete secrecy. They traced money movements across multiple countries, building timelines that revealed something deeply unsettling. The offshore account had been opened in early 2019. Shortly after Meghan and Harry's wedding, money began flowing in almost immediately. Over time, the total reached hundreds of thousands of pounds, an amount impossible to dismiss casually. The most alarming detail was timing. The largest deposits followed major royal events, important family gatherings, state occasions, and private meetings that later became subjects of intense media speculation. The pattern was too consistent to ignore. Someone with inside access appeared to be benefiting financially from that access. Sarah Chen presented her findings to Sir Clive in early January 2026. The hidden offshore account, the repeating payment patterns, the suspicious timing. While no illegal activity could be conclusively proven, The arrangement violated every protocol governing how members of the royal family were expected to handle finances. Sir Clive asked the question hanging over everything: who controlled the offshore account? The evidence pointed toward Meghan Markle. The account had been established shortly after she joined the royal family. The consulting firm was operated by someone with prior connections to her. Sir Clive made a decision that would shift the entire situation. King Charles had to be informed immediately, and once the king knew, Prince William would need to know as well. What had been uncovered wasn't just a financial controversy. It suggested someone within the royal orbit had been monetizing their position in ways that clashed with long-standing principles. The offshore account sat quietly in a Jersey bank, one of the Channel Islands often used for financial privacy by wealthy clients worldwide. From the outside, it looked ordinary, legal, and protected. But when investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something far more intricate than a simple savings account. The account had been opened in March 2019, a moment loaded with significance. Meghan had been a working royal for less than a year. She was still learning protocol, still adjusting to royal life, still shaping her public image. Yet during that same period, sophisticated financial arrangements tied to her connections were already in motion. The account wasn't in Meghan's name. That would have been too obvious. Instead, it was held by a corporate entity registered in the British Virgin Islands. That company was owned by another firm in Delaware, which was managed by a Swiss-based trust. Each layer added distance. Each layer created what lawyers call plausible deniability. Palace investigators didn't stop there. With expert financial analysts and court orders, they forced banks to reveal information normally kept sealed. Slowly, methodically, they traced the ownership chain to the beneficial owner, the person who ultimately controlled the funds. That owner had direct ties to Meghan Markle. The structure itself suggested professional assistance. Someone had deliberately designed the setup to conceal ownership while maintaining access. This wasn't something an average person could arrange overnight. Money flowed in from multiple sources. Some came through the consulting firm billing the Sussex household, while other deposits originated from entertainment companies in Los Angeles. Production firms tied to television, film, and celebrity media organizations appeared in the records. The amounts varied, but they were significant. £10,000 here, £25,000 there, sometimes £50,000 in a single transfer. Investigators noticed another troubling detail. The deposits arrived in clusters, several payments within days, followed by long gaps of silence. Those clusters often matched major royal moments that later became media stories. One payment landed 3 days after a private family meeting at Sandringham. Another arrived shortly after a state banquet where Meghan was photographed alongside world leaders. The pattern suggested coordination. Someone appeared to be providing access or information, while someone else paid for it. The companies involved weren't random either. Several had produced content about the royal family. Others were linked to journalists covering palace affairs. The web of relationships raised a disturbing possibility. Royal access appeared to be monetized. The account also showed outgoing transfers. Money didn't just sit untouched. Funds moved regularly to accounts in the United States and into property investments in California. The spending pattern suggested quiet wealth building and asset diversification. Palace legal advisors reviewed everything carefully. They knew proving wrongdoing would be difficult. Offshore accounts are legal. Receiving payments is legal. Even complex corporate structures can be legal, but taken together, the arrangement violated royal protocols completely. Members of the royal family are not supposed to profit from their positions. They are not supposed to monetize access to family members or inside information. They are not supposed to hide financial arrangements from palace officials. Sir Clive Alderton stared down at the evidence spread across his desk: bank statements, corporate filings, transaction logs stacked thick and heavy. The account nobody was ever supposed to know about had cracked open a hidden world, one that threatened everything the monarchy claimed to stand for. This wasn't rumour or gossip anymore. It was paper, numbers, and cold facts. Prince William was about to learn the truth. On a bitter January morning inside Kensington Palace, Sir Clive arrived without notice, carrying a leather briefcase packed with documents William was never meant to see this way. The meeting had been marked as routine, but the moment William saw Sir Clive's face, he knew something had gone seriously wrong. Sir Clive laid everything out carefully and without drama. The hidden offshore account, the suspicious timing of payments, the layered corporate structures designed to blur ownership, and finally, the connections leading back to Meghan. William listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening as each detail landed harder than the last. He had suspected for years that Meghan's intentions weren't clean, but what he was hearing now blew past even his worst expectations. William had never fully trusted her from the start. Something about her always felt rehearsed. The way she performed for cameras, the way she positioned herself in photos, the way she handled media better than people born into royal life. He had warned Harry before the wedding. He had pushed for a longer engagement, more time, fewer rushed decisions. Harry had exploded in response, accusing William of jealousy and prejudice. That argument cut deep and never truly healed. Harry chose Meghan over his brother's caution. He chose love, or what he believed was love, over the warnings William tried to give. William stepped back after that, hoping he was wrong, hoping time would prove his concerns unfounded. Now, sitting across from Sir Clive with evidence of financial manipulation laid bare, William felt a bitter sense of vindication he never wanted. The evidence suggested Meghan had been monetizing her royal position almost from day one. She built a secret financial system while smiling for cameras and talking about service. She accepted money from entertainment companies while attending state functions and standing beside world leaders. She had turned royal access into a product, and she did it while Harry appeared completely unaware. William asked the hardest question first. Was Harry involved? Did he know about the account? The investigation found no trace of Harry's participation. His name appeared nowhere in the structures. No money flowed into accounts he controlled. Everything pointed to him being in the dark, and that reality made the situation even more painful. Harry had sacrificed his family relationships to defend Meghan, all while unknowingly standing beside someone betraying the institution he was born into. William wanted to confront Meghan immediately. He wanted answers, explanations, the truth, but Sir Clive urged restraint. King Charles had to be informed first. This decision couldn't be driven by William's anger, no matter how justified it felt. The king needed the full picture before anything else happened. William agreed, though the anger burned hot in his chest. He thought back to family gatherings where Meghan smiled across the table. Christenings, weddings, formal events where she played the role of the devoted duchess. Every moment now felt staged, every smile part of a cover story. He also thought of Harry, his younger brother, the boy he protected growing up, the man he stood beside after their mother's death. Harry was about to learn that his wife had been using their family for money, a truth that would break him. Before the king was informed and before any official move was made, William made a decision. He needed to speak to his father privately, not as Prince of Wales to king, but as son to father. What was coming would tear the family apart, and William wanted Charles to understand that despite the betrayal, this was still about family. The meeting ended. William remained alone in his office long after, staring into nothing, feeling the weight of what was coming crash down on him. Meanwhile, the forensic accountants continued their work with surgical precision. They knew every detail mattered. One transaction could unlock an entire network. One date could reveal a pattern. One recipient could connect the dots. They treated the offshore account like an archaeological dig, carefully peeling back layers to expose what lay underneath. Every transaction was organized chronologically. Money in, money out, sources color-coded, dates tagged, amounts cross-referenced. What emerged was a financial map that told a story clearer than any witness ever could. The first deposit hit in April 2019, £20,000 from a Los Angeles-based production company called Westridge Media. The company specialized in celebrity documentaries and reality TV. On the surface, it looked normal. Entertainment companies pay for consulting all the time, but investigators dug deeper. Westridge had only produced one project before that payment, a low-profile documentary that barely made a ripple. After the payment, Westridge suddenly gained access to former royal staff members, people who worked at Kensington Palace during Meghan's time, people with stories about life behind palace walls. The link was impossible to ignore. More payments followed. £15,000 from a British tabloid's parent company landed days after a private family dinner at Windsor Castle. That same week, an exclusive story dropped about tensions between Meghan and Catherine, packed with details only someone at the dinner could know. The timing was razor sharp. Another payment followed in June 2019, £35,000 from an American PR firm. 2 weeks later, glowing profiles of Meghan appeared everywhere, repeating the same phrases, pushing the same narratives. They praised her as a modernizer, a progressive force, a fresh face of the monarchy. The coordination screamed paid campaign, not organic praise. The pattern continued. £5,000 arrived the day after a state banquet with visiting dignitaries. The sender, a celebrity gossip outlet. Shortly after, that outlet published detailed accounts of private banquet conversations. Even seating arrangements were leaked, information that should have stayed sealed. Then came the most disturbing discoveries. Private family photographs, taken at christenings, weddings, and holiday gatherings. Images meant only for family eyes ended up in magazines and online. Every single leak lined up with a payment into Meghan's account: £10,000, £15,000, £25,000. The more exclusive the image, the higher the payment. The outgoing transfers told their own story. Money flowed into American investments, California real estate, stock portfolios managed in New York, business ventures tied to entertainment. Meghan was quietly building wealth separate from Harry, separate from the royal family. One transaction stood out sharply: £50,000 paid to a Los Angeles legal firm specializing in entertainment contracts. The date matched exactly with negotiations around Meghan and Harry's royal exit. It appeared she was planning her departure while still serving as a working royal, funding her exit using money tied to monetized access. The money trail painted a brutal picture. Meghan had systematically monetized access, information, and influence from the moment she entered royal life. She built a hidden financial empire while performing the role of a devoted duchess, with a level of sophistication that pointed to planning, not accidents. The palace now faced an impossible position. An emergency meeting was called in the most secure room at Buckingham Palace. King Charles's most trusted advisors attended. Senior legal counsel, the head of palace communications. Everyone knew this wasn't a scandal that could be smoothed over. Sir Clive presented the evidence calmly, but the impact was devastating. A member of the royal family appeared to have been selling access and information for years, involving hundreds of thousands of pounds, and the sophistication of the operation suggested deliberate planning rather than innocent mistakes. The legal advisors spoke first, and the tone was heavy from the start. Stripping a royal title wasn't some quick administrative move. It meant stepping into constitutional territory rarely touched in modern times. Questions piled up fast: jurisdiction, due process, legal thresholds, and what level of proof would justify a move this extreme. One advisor warned that Meghan could fight back in court immediately. What started as an internal crisis could explode into a global legal spectacle. A private issue would become a public battlefield overnight. The communications team followed with an even darker assessment. If the palace moved against Meghan, she wouldn't stay quiet. She would hit back hard and fast. She had already shown she knew how to shape narratives and bend public opinion. Her media connections ran deep, especially in America, where many already viewed her as a victim of royal prejudice and outdated tradition. Any move against her would be framed as persecution, no matter the evidence. But doing nothing carried its own disaster. If the hidden account leaked through whistleblowers or investigative journalists, the palace would look complicit in a financial cover-up. Members of Parliament would demand hearings. The press would question whether public funds tied to the sovereign grant had been abused. Public trust, already fragile, could shatter completely. One advisor floated a middle ground: quiet negotiations, present the evidence privately, demand the return of the money. In exchange, the matter stays sealed. Meghan would agree never to use royal titles for commercial purposes, and the palace would avoid public exposure or criminal action. Prince William, invited at his father's request, shut that idea down instantly. He argued that negotiating with Meghan would hand her leverage. She could demand concessions. She could threaten to go public with counter-accusations. She could claim discrimination or mistreatment. She could paint herself as a martyr while casting the family as villains. Appeasement wouldn't work, William said, because Meghan had already shown she didn't respect family loyalty or institutional boundaries. Another fear settled over the room. What about Harry? Stripping Meghan's title would publicly signal serious wrongdoing. Harry would be forced to choose, again, between his wife and his family. Most believed they knew the outcome. He would choose Meghan. That meant losing him completely. The fracture already there would become permanent and impossible to repair. King Charles had listened quietly through all of it, but now he finally spoke. He acknowledged the pain this would cause Harry. He acknowledged the media chaos waiting outside the palace gates. He acknowledged every argument for restraint and compromise. Then he said something that shifted the entire room. The monarchy, he said, didn't survive because of power, but because of principles. For centuries, it claimed to stand for duty, service, and honor above personal gain. If they allowed someone to monetize royal access without consequence, they betrayed those principles. The institution would become a lie. And once the public believed it was a lie, no amount of careful messaging could save it. The evidence was overwhelming. The conduct was indefensible. No matter the personal cost, no matter the political fallout, some lines couldn't be crossed without response. Meghan had crossed that line repeatedly and deliberately. The meeting ended with a clear understanding. King Charles would personally review every document and make the final decision, but everyone in that room knew which way he was leaning. The palace's impossible position was about to become a definitive choice. Charles moved fast. For 3 days, King Charles isolated himself with the evidence. He dismissed staff, cancelled appointments, and locked himself inside his private study at Clarence House. Documents covered his desk in neat, unforgiving stacks. Bank statements, corporate filings, transaction logs. Each page represented another breach of trust, another violation of principles he had spent his life defending. He read everything more than once. He searched for explanations that might soften the damage. Poor advice, misunderstanding of rules, missing context. But with every reread, those explanations collapsed. The complexity of the financial structures made ignorance impossible. Layers of entities, strategic jurisdictions, timed payments aligned with royal events. This wasn't accidental. Someone had monetized private family moments and confidential information, and that someone appeared to be his daughter-in-law. Harry weighed on Charles's mind constantly during those 3 days. His younger son had always been fragile, always searching for belonging after Diana's death. Meghan had offered him escape, understanding, a promise of life outside royal pressure. Harry chose that promise over family warnings. Now Charles faced telling his son that the woman he loved, the mother of his children, had been using the family for financial gain. The conversation would shatter whatever fragile bond remained. Harry would defend Meghan. He would reject the evidence. He would accuse the family of persecution. The divide would become permanent. Charles also thought of William, his heir, the future king. William had warned them all before the wedding. He had seen what others ignored or refused to face. Now, William waited to see whether his father had the strength to act. Beyond family, Charles wrestled with duty. He had waited decades to become king, endured ridicule, scandal, and public doubt. He had rebuilt his image through charity and environmental leadership. He had stepped onto the throne determined to modernize the monarchy while preserving its dignity. Failing to act now would undo all of that. The message would be devastating. Royal titles could be exploited without consequences. Public trust would evaporate. Charles consulted constitutional experts. Removing titles was difficult, but legal. He could ask Parliament to act or use royal prerogative through letters patent. Both paths were lawful, both public, both explosive. He also sought counsel from the Archbishop of Canterbury, not about legality, but morality. Was it right to publicly shame Meghan, even if deserved? The Archbishop reminded him that mercy without accountability wasn't mercy at all. It enabled harm and prolonged wrongdoing. On the 4th day, Charles emerged from his study with resolve. He summoned Sir Clive Alderton and issued clear orders. Meghan's titles would be removed formally, but before any public announcement, Harry would be informed privately. Charles would write to his son himself. Harry deserved to hear it from his father, not through headlines. The letter would explain the evidence. It would express love while taking action against Harry's wife. It would offer Harry a choice: stand with Meghan and accept permanent distance, or acknowledge the truth and begin rebuilding trust. The decision was made. Now came the hardest part: living with the consequences. King Charles wrote the letter by hand. He sat with a fountain pen and royal stationery, choosing every word carefully, knowing this might be the last meaningful letter he ever sent to his younger son. Multiple drafts were discarded. He searched for the balance between honesty and compassion. He began with love. Harry would always be his son. Nothing could erase that bond, even under unbearable strain. He recalled childhood memories, moments untouched by duty or crown, just a father and his boy. Then Charles turned to the present. He explained that palace investigators had uncovered serious financial irregularities connected to Meghan. He avoided euphemisms. He described the offshore account, the suspicious payments, the timing tied to royal events. He explained that the evidence pointed to a systematic monetization of royal access and information, and Charles wrote that he understood how difficult this would be for Harry to accept. He made one thing clear from the jump. Harry loved Meghan, no question about it, and Charles did not deny that. They had built a life together, shared a home, shared responsibilities as parents, and that bond was real. He was not asking Harry to stop loving his wife, not even close. What he was asking was for Harry to step back, look at the documented findings with a clear head, and understand why serious action had become unavoidable. The letter laid it all out, line by line. Meghan's royal titles would be formally withdrawn. No loopholes, no delays. She would no longer be allowed to use Duchess or the style of Her Royal Highness. This was not framed as revenge or bitterness. It was positioned as institutional survival. The monarchy, Charles explained, could not allow any member to benefit from royal status while ignoring established rules without consequences. Then came the hard choice. Charles told Harry he had two paths in front of him, neither one easy. He could stand fully beside Meghan, knowing that decision would create lasting distance between himself and the royal family. Or he could acknowledge the findings, cooperate with the family to address the situation, and begin the long, uncomfortable process of rebuilding trust. No sugarcoating, no false hope. The letter closed on a deeply personal note. Charles reminded Harry that no matter what, he would always be his father, always open to a conversation, always hoping that one day reconciliation might still be possible. But the tone hardened at the end. The decision itself was final. The evidence had been reviewed. The institution had to be protected. Period. Charles personally sealed the envelope and arranged for diplomatic delivery straight to California. No assistance, no security teams, no gate drop-offs. He insisted the letter be placed directly into Harry's hands. This was private, serious, and deserved time to sink in before anyone else could interfere. The letter arrived on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Security called Harry to the gate where the courier waited. Harry signed for it, spotted his father's handwriting instantly, and felt his gut twist. Letters marked private and confidential never carried good news, especially not by courier. Harry shut himself inside his office and started reading. Page by page, his face shifted from confusion to disbelief to raw anger. He reread certain lines again and again, hoping he had misunderstood something. But the meaning didn't change. His father was alleging serious financial wrongdoing. The message was brutal. Meghan's titles were being removed. The family was demanding accountability. And yes, Harry was being forced to choose where he stood. His hands shook as he reached the final page. He immediately called his father's private number, straight to voicemail. He called again, same result. Then a text fired off, demanding an immediate explanation. No reply came. Hours later, Charles finally returned the call. It lasted less than 10 minutes, but every second burned. Harry exploded, calling it persecution. Charles stayed steady, stating the findings were conclusive. Harry accused the family of bias and envy. Charles shut that down fast, saying this had nothing to do with emotions and everything to do with documented financial irregularities. Harry demanded the process be stopped. Charles said it was already finished. The decision had been made. The call ended in anger, with words Harry would later wish he could take back. He told his father he was choosing Meghan, that he would stand by her no matter what he called palace lies, that Charles had now lost both of his sons. Then Harry hung up. And just like that, the line between father and son went dead. The palace moved quickly after that. The official announcement was scheduled for Thursday morning at exactly 10 a.m. The timing was surgical, early enough to dominate headlines, late enough to ensure every newsroom was ready. Behind the scenes, the communications team had spent days refining every sentence. Each word was weighed for legal safety and public impact. The statement dropped simultaneously across all official channels, royal website, social media, and direct journalist feeds within seconds. Newsrooms exploded, phones rang non-stop, producers cut into programming, editors shouted orders. This was the biggest royal development in years, and nobody wanted to be second. The statement itself was short, cold, and devastating. It confirmed that after a comprehensive financial review, serious concerns had been identified regarding the conduct of the Duchess of Sussex during her time as a working royal. No emotion, no apology, just facts. It stated that the concerns involved financial arrangements that violated long-standing protocols governing royal conduct. The palace confirmed that His Majesty the King had approved the immediate removal of all royal titles and styles previously held by the Duchess. Effective immediately, she would no longer use Her Royal Highness or the title Duchess of Sussex. The wording stressed that this decision followed extensive review and consultation with senior advisors. What the statement didn't say mattered just as much. No specific transactions were named. No companies were listed, no detailed allegations were included. Legal advisors had drawn a hard line. Details could invite lawsuits. The language had to justify the move without creating legal risk. The final paragraph expressed regret that events had reached this point. It reaffirmed the monarchy's commitment to integrity and noted that difficult decisions are sometimes required to protect the institution. No follow-up, no interviews, no clarification. The reaction was instant chaos. Breaking news alerts flooded screens worldwide. Anchors struggled to stay composed while reading history in real time. Veteran royal reporters admitted they had never seen anything like this. Social media went nuclear. Support and backlash trended side by side. Some accused the palace of discrimination. Others said accountability had finally arrived. Comment sections turned into war zones. Families argued at dinner tables. Friends unfollowed each other online. The announcement split public opinion clean down the middle. Within an hour, palace communications was drowning in media requests. Everyone wanted interviews, leaks, background briefings. Every request was denied. The statement stood alone. International coverage intensified. American networks ran non-stop analysis. European outlets debated constitutional fallout. The story dominated headlines in a way few royal events ever had. Even markets reacted. British tourism stocks dipped briefly. Betting companies froze royal-related odds, unsure how to price a moment this volatile. But the loudest moment was the silence from California. No statements, no posts, no leaks. The Montecito property stayed quiet, though security presence increased. Journalists camped outside the gates, waiting. Palace staff watched closely. They had prepared for backlash and chaos, but not this pause. The silence felt heavy, like pressure building before impact, and everyone knew one thing for sure: the counterstrike was coming, and Meghan would not stay quiet forever. The response finally dropped 36 hours after the palace announcement, and that timing was no accident at all. It was long enough to lawyer up, long enough to line up publicists, and long enough to craft a message designed to hit hard. When Meghan spoke, she didn't do it casually or off the cuff. She chose her battlefield carefully, releasing a polished statement through the foundation she shared with Harry, knowing exactly who would read it first and how the world would interpret it. The message was emotional, calculated, and heavy with accusation. Meghan claimed she was shocked and deeply hurt by what she called a public humiliation built on lies. She insisted she had served the monarchy with loyalty and integrity, only to be thrown aside when she became inconvenient. Right from the start, she flatly denied any financial misconduct whatsoever and emphasized that she had always acted in good faith. She described the offshore account as a legitimate business structure, allegedly created on professional advice to manage assets tied to her entertainment career before royal life. According to her, palace officials were fully aware of these arrangements from day one. She questioned why concerns were suddenly raised years after she stepped back from royal duties, calling the timing suspicious, personal, and retaliatory, suggesting a broader strategy to undermine her reputation internationally. Then came the moment that set the internet on fire. Meghan openly suggested that the actions against her were rooted in bigotry. She wrote that from the moment she joined the royal family as a woman of colour, she was held to harsher standards than others. She implied that similar financial setups by white royals were ignored, while hers became grounds for punishment, turning her personal grievance into a larger cultural critique. She framed the investigation as a cover story, a convenient excuse to target her. The statement warned that legal options were being explored, including potential defamation claims. Meghan presented herself as a mother under attack, standing up to an institution that, in her words, never truly welcomed her, and she hinted that she would continue to fight for fairness and transparency in the public eye. From a public relations angle, it was a sharp move. The focus shifted fast, away from financial questions and straight toward motive and morality. What had been a story about conduct suddenly became a debate about discrimination. Newsrooms scrambled, rewriting headlines within hours as accusations of bigotry took center stage, forcing reporters to balance legal caution with sensational coverage. Support poured in quickly. Celebrities voiced solidarity. American talk shows ran long segments criticizing the palace. Advocacy groups expressed concern. In the US, coverage leaned sympathetic, painting Meghan as a modern woman targeted by an outdated system that couldn't handle change and questioning whether traditional institutions were inherently biased against people like her. Her legal team followed up with a warning shot. They threatened action if the palace released financial evidence publicly, arguing it would violate privacy laws. Harry then appeared in a short video online, looking worn down but defiant. He declared full support for Meghan and accused his family of repeating patterns that once destroyed his mother, warning that history should not repeat itself with Meghan and their children. The palace found itself buried under exactly what it feared most. Allegations of financial misconduct were now drowning beneath claims of persecution. Meghan had flipped the script, casting herself as the victim instead of someone facing serious questions. International commentary amplified her perspective, challenging traditional royal narratives and forcing commentators to weigh intent against actions. Public opinion in Britain stayed split, but internationally, sympathy leaned her way. The counterattack had landed, and it landed clean, catching palace advisors off guard while also forcing them to consider contingency strategies they hadn't fully prepared publicly. But behind palace walls, there was no panic. They had expected this response. They had prepared for accusations, outrage, and narrative warfare, and they had prepared something else entirely: evidence that couldn't be spun, reframed, or shouted down. Evidence that would ultimately clarify the facts for the world without palace commentary. 3 days later, a major investigative journalist received an anonymous package. Inside were documents, carefully redacted, but crystal clear where it mattered. Bank statements exposed the offshore account. Corporate records traced ownership layers. Transaction receipts showed dates and amounts without ambiguity, making it impossible for anyone to dispute the paper trail or the money flow. Most damaging of all were emails. Direct exchanges between Meghan and media intermediaries discussed payments in return for access to royal information. One message referenced sharing details of a private family gathering for £25,000. Another outlined exclusive photographs from a royal event in exchange for £15,000. The correspondence demonstrated deliberate, methodical financial planning. The journalist didn't rush the story. Every document was verified independently. Financial experts confirmed the banking records. Corporate lawyers validated registrations. Digital forensic teams confirmed the emails were authentic and untouched. Sources corroborated details, and the package's provenance was carefully checked, ensuring credibility before publication. When the exposé dropped on a Sunday morning, it hit like a thunderclap. Images of documents filled screens. Redacted lines still told a brutal story. Money trails were traced cleanly. Intent was impossible to deny. Readers immediately grasped the extent of the monetization scheme and the pattern of deliberate planning behind it. The public mood shifted almost instantly. Those who had defended Meghan now faced documented proof that told a very different story. The emails were especially damaging, revealing planning, negotiation, and profit, not confusion or misunderstanding. Critics seized the narrative to highlight institutional protection and accountability. Online conversations changed fast. Supporters struggled to defend what was written in Meghan's own words. Accusations of bigotry lost momentum when faced with concrete evidence of monetized access. Discussions turned analytical, dissecting timelines, transactions, and email evidence in unprecedented detail. American media softened its stance. Talk show hosts admitted the documents raised serious concerns. Outlets that once condemned the palace now questioned whether the decision had been unavoidable. Social commentary highlighted the contrast between personal narrative and verified facts. Meghan's legal team responded briefly, claiming the documents were obtained improperly and violated privacy rights. But the impact was already locked in. The public had seen enough. Palace strategy quietly succeeded, letting evidence speak louder than words, exposing the systematic financial maneuvering at the heart of the controversy. The palace stayed silent. No denials, no confirmations, no commentary at all. They simply let the evidence speak for itself, knowing silence can hit harder than words, knowing timing and verification alone would sway public perception eventually. The truth had surfaced exactly as the palace said it would. Meghan had systematically monetized her royal position, and the hidden account wasn't protection, it was proof of betrayal. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments, then click the next video on your screen to keep the story going.